on the tables in front of you. Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. I'm going to introduce all four of them at one time, and then we'll just have each come up after the other. So we'll hear first from Dr. Sarah Bexell, Graduate School of Social Work, Institute for Human-Animal Connection, and Faculty Director of the Center for Sustainability. After that, we will hear from Julia Senecal, Assistant Director of the Center of Sustainability and Research Project Manager at the Institute for Human-Animal Connection. This will be followed up by our lovely community partner, Laura Martinez, who is the Manager of Environmental Justice Programs at Cultivando. And then finally, our student speaker, Eli Zehe, who is a fourth-year undergrad in Geography and Political Science. With that, can we get please a round of applause for Dr. Sarah? Okay. Well, thank you, Anna, for the beautiful introduction, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to sort of set the stage. What is ecological justice? And then I will wrap up my very quick 5 minutes with what is the center starting to do in this particular area of work. I want to share with you a quote that was really instrumental to me in my graduate studies. A huge collaborative study came out called the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment way back in 2005. And this was a call to humanity that we were so damaging Earth's biosphere, and namely biodiversity and its ability to function, that we were placing humanity at risk for survival. So I cited this multiple times in my dissertation. This was really important to me in the work that I was doing, and I want to share this quote. And I want to share two ways of thinking about this quote. Everyone in the world depends completely on Earth's ecosystems and the functions they create. I want to go back to 2005 when this was originally written. It said everyone in the world depends completely on Earth's ecosystems and the systems they provide. Psychologically, that's very different for us as humans, right? That first way of saying it is like, wow, Earth's out there making all this stuff for us to use. Isn't that nice of the Earth? What we're starting to think about now when we think about ecological justice is that all entities are out there providing for their own reasons, not to be used by humans. So it's a very different take on thinking about how important Earth systems and all the other species on this Earth are. A little bit more on that, just because I think it's important to think about what is it? So a very boring definition is the process by which the natural environment produces resources that we often take for granted, such as clean air and water, food, timber, aesthetic pleasure and healing, climate regulation, and pollination. We all really need all that stuff. So what are some cool examples? That beautiful Bohemian waxwing is going to eat that berry in that tree, then he's going to fly off, and in a few hours he's going to poop, and there's going to be a wonderful seed and a pile of fertilizer ready to shoot up in the spring. That's seed dispersal. Another one that you might be able to relate to even more is this little guy here. This is a Mexican free-tailed bat who's drinking nectar from an agave plant. That might bring up something for somebody. And he's going to fly off, and he's going to then drink nectar in another one and of course pollinate. So pollination. So the next time you have margaritas with your friends on Friday night, please thank a Mexican free-tailed bat. You would not be able to have that margarita without a bat. So our abiotic and biotic communities out there creating all of these things that literally makes human life on this planet possible. So what is ecological justice? It is the recognition that humans and all other species on Earth, as well as abiotic natural systems, are intricately interlinked. If the health and well-being of one of these aspects is harmed, that harm radiates out into all of the systems. We are coming up against multiple planetary boundaries that now places our own species at risk. And why is that? Because we keep causing unbelievable damage to our ecosystems. And now that's coming back. And we've benefited, right? Woo, look at us and all the stuff that we have, right? We have benefited a lot, but now that's coming back to us. So when all aspects are, so we can cause harm, or we can allow all of those entities to flourish. Because the more we allow for flourishing, then human flourishing can happen too. And with equity instead of what we have now, which is utter lack of equity and flourishing. One of the things that we also, as I mentioned, are coming up against is these limits. So Earth is primarily a closed system. Our thinking of human flourishing and what is possible, equitable, and compassionate within ecological limits is a paramount consideration. We are not the only species evolved concerned, nor with physical limits that we accept for all other species. When another species overpopulates, we all get in a tizzy and we have to go kill them, right? Because there's too many of them. We accept those limits for other species, but that's not a limit we accept for ourselves. And that's a very, very hard and painful truth. So ecological justice involves creating and allowing for regenerative human systems to be practiced that protect the health and well-being of humans, other species, and Earth. And very important, environmental justice is embedded within ecological justice, and environmental justice for all human beings is not possible without true ecological justice. So with that, what are we doing here at the center? So we have a Center for Sustainability. What we're trying to move into now is perhaps even a name change to creating the Center for Regenerative Futures, moving away from our sort of ecological standpoints, which is defined by authoritarian, dualistic, unsustainable, delusional, mechanistic, self-destructive, unwise, imbalanced, and power-seeking sort of ways of being in the world, to ecological, which is democratic, holistic, sustainable, compassionate, natural, regenerative, wise, balanced, and interdependent. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Susan.
That's me. So I'm gonna kind of continue on some concepts that Sarah introduced for us and share with you a bit about eco-justice centered work and community engaged work that Sarah and I are both involved in, and Derek too, through our work at the center and the Institute for Human Animal Connection. And I just want to take a minute, and Prana recognized this in her opening remarks, and Sarah also acknowledged it, but it's really important to acknowledge and underline the disproportionate impacts that the climate crisis and the biodiversity loss crises are having on vulnerable populations around the world. These populations often contribute the very least to the climate crisis and biodiversity loss crisis, but are impacted the most. Pictured here is the Pakistani floods from last summer, caused by rougher than normal monsoons and glacier melting as a result of a hotter than normal heat wave. The vulnerable populations experienced impacts, including negative health impacts, food, water, and livelihood insecurity, threats to their cultural identity, migration, and forced displacement. It's also really important to recognize that in addition to these physical and socioeconomic impacts that these vulnerable populations are experiencing, really important to recognize the mental health implications as well, of not just dealing with all of those socioeconomic and physical impacts I just listed, but also witnessing their beloved land being destroyed. There are some new terms for this specific brand of mental health concern, specifically related to the PTSD, depression, and anxiety as a result of climate change and biodiversity loss. Some of you may have heard these terms. One is eco-anxiety, another is climate anxiety. So transitioning into talking about eco-anxiety, another group that is tremendously impacted specifically by these mental health implications of the global environmental change crisis is our youth. In thinking about they just continue to grapple with what their future holds. So listed here are some statistics from a landmark study published in 2021 in the Lancet, where 10,000 young people ages 16 to 25 were surveyed in 10 different countries, which is really cool, about their attitudes and beliefs related to the climate crisis and their attitudes or how they're feeling about how their respective governments are handling the crisis. And I won't read all of these to you, but I really want to highlight this third bullet point here, that almost half of the respondents indicated that their feelings about climate change negatively affected their daily life and functioning. That is alarming and something that needs to be addressed. And needs to be addressed arguably in the education system, a system that most of our young people are exposed to throughout their lives. And thinking about how we need to take action, we need to center the voices of those most impacted, the vulnerable populations and our youth. And we are lucky enough to get the chance to do that, to center and lift up the voices of our youth who are very impacted by this mental health crisis. We are partnering with Denver Public Schools, a group of, many of you may already know this, but a group of concerned students, and this is, I think, the core group of students, came together, I believe in 2020, to demand that DPS take action in addressing the climate crisis. They were concerned not just with like the global, not the global impact, but also the environmental justice implications, specifically here in Denver. And they were like, hey, DPS, what are you doing to acknowledge this? And this group of amazing students were successful in advocating for a climate action resolution to be passed in the spring of last year, which was amazing. And in that resolution was the mandate that sustainability education be integrated into curriculum across the district. So again, we're fortunate enough to be partnering with them, with the youth and teachers and administrators at DPS to support this curriculum development. Specifically, our group is working to develop a professional development opportunity for teachers to support them. And not just like learning about eco-justice concepts and understanding the interconnections of humans, other species, and the environment, and feeling, confident in teaching those concepts and integrating them into math and science and social studies, but also supporting our teachers in really making space for their students and themselves to take in the information, process it, recognize emotions that come up, also recognizing that teachers are not mental health professionals, but really just supporting teachers in creating space for their students and themselves. This PD opportunity is grounded in what we're currently studying. It's an emerging term, an emerging field called regenerative education. And I don't have time to explain all of it right now, but I'm happy to chat afterwards. But really, we're rooting our work in the question, how do we educate for wholeness and well-being? And that's not just wholeness and well-being of our students, but also teachers and the schools and their communities and the state and the entire world and all of the species that are on this planet. So again, we're hoping that by supporting teachers and taking a trauma-informed approach to integrating these concepts, these very complex, emotionally challenging topics into their curriculum, we're also supporting them in helping students think critically about the systems and practices that are perpetuating these harms, and then shifting that despair and hopelessness and all of those emotions, anxiety that come up with those topics, shifting from that despair to hope and then into action. Thank you.
Martinez. Yeah. So today I'm going to talk to you about our project that we're working on, which is the IDEA project, which stands for Air Quality Investigation and Research for Equity. But before I do, I want to explain a little bit about our organization. Cultivando is an organization that serves the Latino community in Adams County and statewide. We focus primarily on supporting our community leadership to advance health equity through advocacy, collaboration, and policy change. We use promotoras. What we do is a promotora model, our leaders in the community that are highly skilled and trusted experts in our community who lead our work. We work with our community, not for our community. And what that does is it gives them power to be advocates for their own interests, which is really nice. Our IDEA project began in 2020 after Suncor was fined $9 million and Cultivando received a little over $1 million to do air monitoring in Commerce City, Global, Elaria, and Swansea. These communities are disproportionately impacted communities. They have a score of 80 or higher on the EnviroScreen system used by the Colorado Department for Public Health and Environment. They're also close to many sources of pollution such as the Senecal refinery, which is the primary one, I-70 and other industrial factories as well. That's actually just a few blocks from where my kids go to school. So what is the purpose of our project? Well, first it's to determine the levels of pollutants in the air. Figure out how much of benzene and all those toxic chemicals are being emitted into the air. Also evaluate the impact of these pollutants on human health and community education, advocacy, and action. One of the most important parts of our project is because this is a community-driven project, they need to know what is going on. What is it that they're breathing? What is it that they can do and what can they do to mitigate the problem? Or can they even go and speak at the state level? We have partnered with Boulder Air, and Dr. Detlef Hemlich is leading the project and the air monitoring project. And it focuses on several different types of air monitors. The stationary monitor is our most comprehensive air monitor, and it monitors over 50 different pollutants in the area. We have also the mobile monitor. The stationary monitor is on the north side of Senecal, and the mobile monitor has just become a permanent monitor, and it's on the south side of Senecal. We also have, like I said, because it's a community-driven project, we involve the community by providing them with monitors so they can understand what it is that they're breathing and what it is that, what are the health impacts of that. And for that, we have 25 purple air monitors, and we also have 100 Suma canister samples. The Suma canisters is kind of like a big aluminum ball, and the community has to open it up in 15 minutes, let the air be absorbed, and that is how we test for VOCs or volatile organic compounds. So of course, Sundown is a documentary that we created when we first started the project, and we involved several members from the community to kind of figure out what is it that they know about Suncor, how is it impacting them on a personal level on their health, and for many of them, culturally as well. We've also done video interviews as well, and the purpose of that as well is to record their history, record their story. A lot of times when you're on a low income, you don't have the voice, and so you can't really tell people what is going on, what is it that you're living day in and day out. But the health evaluation and workshop listening sessions, our goal is to really experience and explore what is it that, what are the potential impacts of breathing benzene? What are the potential impacts of breathing particulate matter 2.5 and 10, and how can that affect our daily lives? What we've seen in these health evaluations and questionnaires is that when the community members go to the hospital or go to the doctor, the doctors don't take into account environments where they live in. So the pollution is really irrelevant when they diagnose, and they come up with another solution, such as, oh, we're allergic to your dog, or, you know, you're smoking, or you're close to, you know, your air conditioner isn't working. But they don't take into account really where is it that our community is working, living and breathing day in and day out. And so that is why those are also very important as well. Our student internship, as was mentioned previously, is if our students don't know what's going on, they're already impacted. 45% of students interviewed, for them to say that they're concerned that it negatively impacts them, we need to educate them. They need to know that they can find a solution, that they are the solution. They need to be advocates in their own community. And that is why our student internship is very important. It's an integral part of our project as well. We did it last year, and we're planning on continuing it this summer as well. They learn about earth justice, soil justice, air justice, water justice, specifically in Commerce City, where you really can't drink the water. Our city says that our water is healthy and safe to drink, but honestly, you can boil it, you can filter it as many times as you want, but as long as if you don't have a filter or you don't buy your water from one of the water mills, you cannot drink that water. It is just impossible to drink. And so that is why it's very important for us to incorporate our students, our high school students, into this project. We also have the advisory council. They are the conscience of our project. They're the ones, there's 10 community members. They live in Commerce City, Global area, and Swansea. And they're the ones who tell us what's going on. what isn't going on, what isn't working, what is working, what is it that they don't understand. That allows us to adjust our project for the community. Why is this important? Well, these air contaminants, toluene, benzene, ozone, particulate matter 2.5, as I had mentioned earlier, they have been linked to cardiovascular health and trouble breathing issues. They've also been linked to asthma, cancer, as well as impact of low birth outcomes as well. And so it's very important to analyze, is there a correlation between what people are breathing and what their health has to say as well, how it's impacted. These are our recommended levels for emissions for any of these pollutants. Benzene is 0.9 parts per billion. Now, the World Health Organization says that there's no safe level of exposure. However, Suncor and the close industrial factories around these communities constantly emit levels that are much higher than this. And just recently, Senecal released a higher amount of benzene into our South Platte River, which is very dangerous for our community, our water, and our fish that live there. These alerts are always, they're a lot higher in our community than they are in other communities around the state. And to show that to you, we have this graph. This is only for particulate matter 2.5, and it's only from October 8th through the 13th. But these spikes right here, this is where our concern lies, because the air monitoring that Suncor has, as well as the state, do not account for these. They only do 60-minute averages, and these only last a few minutes. But it's not just particulate matter that is peaking at that time. It could also be toluene and benzene at the same time, and that's where the danger lies. Because when you're breathing these toxins or these pollutants at the same time, it can increase your chances of getting cancer, getting asthma, migraines, you know, and all of these health issues that you can't really find a solution to. And Boulder Air, for example, and this is what I had mentioned earlier, they're seeing higher values of all of these pollutants in Commerce City than they do in Broomfield and Longmont and Boulder. So it's very important to understand where our community is, what is it that they're breathing, and what is around them, and why we need to do something, and why we're doing something. It's actually considered a sacrifice altogether. To find more information, and you can see these graphs slide, they update every 15 minutes. You can go to our website at cultivando.org. That one, the data is simplified so that our community can understand it in both Spanish and English, so that they can know, you know, should I go outside or not? They go onto our website, they can see if the air quality is good or not. Boulder Air data their website is more comprehensive, so they'll be able to see all of the pollutants, the levels, and make that comparison on their own. What we need to do, a call to action. First, we need to support organizations or entities that are fighting for environmental justice. We need to also advocate for air permitting regulations that actually consider the impact of human health. And most importantly, I invite every single one of you, each and every one of you, to invite your friends and family members, anyone that you know, to our press conference where we'll actually release our results of our project into the community. It's going to be here at the University of Denver in Community Commons 1700 Ground Forum, and that's March 15, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So I hope to see you then. Last but not least, Zehe.
So my name is Eli. I am a student here at Cecil. I've been working here since last June on the Santa Creek Regional Greenway Outreach Program. And I've had the unique opportunity to design a field study sort of to get at gaps in data collection and that will connect to eco-justice and our community outreach that we're just starting to begin in the community just this month. So I'll present for more of a broad approach as if you wanted to use this sort of field study for your own project or change it in some way and use sort of the work I've done at Sand Creek as a case study for how that could work. So problem is that when researching a specific neighborhood or community, some data is unavailable. So I was using open data catalogs, trying to learn and educate our team as much as we could about neighborhoods in the immediate proximity of the Sand Creek Regional Greenway. That spans from Commerce City all the way down through Central Park neighborhood and northern Denver, down into through Aurora. And so some data was unavailable or simply not yet collected as the demand wasn't there for it. And this creates hurdles in our research and gaps in our understanding of the location. As a research team, we want to do as much as we can to, educate ourselves before we go into the communities. We'll never actually have those lived experiences. So we want to at least take that extra step and have that knowledge there. And so this created a hurdle in that. And so the solution at its most simplest boiled down to ArcGIS collector and a bike. And with those two things, I was able to create and conduct a field study that would best serve to collect all data of interest. So I'll go a bit more into Sand Creek itself and the field study. So the design on ArcGIS, I created a geodatabase that was to be populated. So there I defined what variables we wanted to study, and I'll show that data on the next slide. But it's like, okay, I want to look at how many entry points there are, how many park structures, be that picnic tables, playgrounds, all the way down to trash cans. I want to look at areas that we might deem of concern, that being not paved, or there's bumps in the road, anything that would deter use of the trail. And then to actually go out and collect that data, I used an app. You're able to download it on your phone called ArcGIS Collector to actually capture and record any desired field data. And so actual execution, so we had two teams that started at either end of the trail. You can see it's 14 miles, so we didn't want to put everyone through too much work. So we started at either end, met in the middle at Bluff Lake there with that little square. And so anytime a desired data point was found, we'd stop our bikes, get out our phones, and mark it down, and that data is automatically geo-referenced, and it is automatically updated to the original database that you designed. So once you've gone out there, collected all the data on your phone, you can go back, open up your laptop, it'll be there for you, ready to export. In my case, I used ArcGIS Pro and to create a map sort of like the one you've seen right up there. So we have all data and then some of the more interesting data points that we found. And to summarize, those little black lines are where the counties break. So Aurora is Arapahoe, Denver County, and then Commerce City is in Adams County. And to summarize, we found that the Denver sections of the Greenway are by far the most accessible portions of the trail. You can see how many more entry points there are in that sort of middle zone compared to Aurora or especially Commerce City. And that areas of the Greenway by Commerce City and Aurora have less infrastructure actually designed to encourage the use of that space by community members. And one suggestion, if you do a study of this type, is to cover your area of study multiple times. Make sure that that data set's fine-tuned to really capture everything that you want to. And so relating this to eco-justice, sort of with the idea of there are tangible health benefits of utilizing outdoor and green spaces, and that access to these open spaces and is not impartial. Connecting it just back to the last presentation, sometimes the air quality is to such a state that you can't even use that space in the first place. And so partnering this data with from the field study with demographic data, you can really find which communities are most affected by this unequal access. So in our case, we found that Denver by far was doing more to actually engage the communities around them, and that these were areas of high income, especially Central Park neighborhood was by far the highest medium household income out of any of these areas. And they had more trails, more park structures, and were doing a lot more to actually engage members of the community. And so this is sort of to begin to find and plan which communities could actually benefit the most from engagement activities, or where efforts must be made to make these spaces more welcoming and accessible, and really give those communities the tools to empower themselves and get out and use the Greenway. And it's time for Q&A.